Good afternoon, and thank you for tuning in to Leadership Matters, informing leaders, inspiring solutions. I'm Sheryl White, and I am delighted to have our whole co-host team with us today, Dr. Undraye Howard and Dr. Loretta Howard. Thank you for being with us today.
Yep. Good afternoon.
Thank
Yes.
you. Hello.
Yeah, we're going to be discussing leading amid uncertainty. And joining us as a guest to really help us have this conversation is Rudolph A. Johnson III, President and CEO of the Neighborhood House Association in San Diego, California. So awesome to have you with us today, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Dr. White. Thank you, Dr. Howard. Thank you, Dr. Howard. Great to join you today.
Great.
Yes, good to have you here. And I guess I'm especially delighted because you're my president and CEO of the Neighborhood House. And,
no pressure, Dr. White. No pressure.
Yes,
No pressure.
exactly.
No pressure.
So certainly. So for our listening audience who may not be as familiar with you as we are, we'd love to have you start with just sharing a little bit about yourself and your leadership journey.
Sure, absolutely, Dr. White. Oftentimes when I go around the country, I start out by saying, you hear the old adage, it's not where you begin, it's where you end in life. And I'm saying, that's not true. It's all about the journey that you travel. That really is the thing that adds value to who you are and what you've done in your legacy. So with that in mind, I am an inner city product. Went to public school, Head Start, free and reduced lunch, went to an HBCU, achieved my civil engineering degree from Texas Southern University, did my graduate work at San Diego State in public administration, worked for the city of San Diego as a civil engineer. Most folks don't know that. Spent many years in the field, accepting water lines, sewer lines, storm drains on behalf of the city of San Diego. So I actually designed systems, if you will, utility systems. And then I got my big break. I built the San Diego Convention Center expansion. And so that was my coming out party, right? We all have about 3 of those in our career. That was my first coming out party. We finished it on time, under budget, all that good stuff. And then I went to work for the San Diego Convention Center, caught the eye of their CEO, Carol Wallace, who became my mentor over the years and eventually became the general manager of the San Diego Convention Center. And then 20 years ago, competed for this opportunity as the president and CEO of the Neighborhood House Association. So I'm currently serving in my 20th year as the president and CEO. So I hope that gives your listeners, a little flavor that we just didn't wake up and scratch off a lotto ticket.
Right.
We actually had to do some work.
Yeah, definitely.
Wonderful.
Definitely. And Dr. Johnson, again, it's just great to have you on the show. And again, I would just say great leader across the country. And certainly folks know Dr. Johnson, whether it's at the University of Michigan when you did the Leadership Institute, to leading nonprofit organizations and associations. So we're so excited to have you here today with us. Here's a question that I'm really interested in asking you. What types of uncertainty have you navigated through your leadership journey? What has that looked like? What does that mean? What does that feel like? How have you defined those opportunities?
Well, Dr. Howard, I'm going to tell you, as I was prepping for this segment, I had about 15 scenarios I could go deep and wide into, but you only gave me 2.
Right.
So I'm going to take those 2.
Okay.
The first scenario, navigating through the pandemic. I mean, no seasoned CEO across the country in any form or fashion, nonprofit, government, for-profit, could have anticipated a major pandemic to navigate through. And so we were, this was our season as CEOs. And, you only get one of those in a career and maybe one of those in a lifetime. And so that was the first thing. And the second thing was, for sure, these series of executive orders that are being issued by the White House, and really navigating not only your operation, but budget planning, budget scenarios, kind of holding your board, your policy body in line, keeping the employee base, the workforce in line, and really taking things on a daily basis. And Dr. White hears me say this every single day. We're going to take each scenario one day at a time. Sometimes it's hourly, right? Because this administration can say one thing in the morning, sometimes it's a different thing in the evening. So those would be the two scenarios, and we can go deep and as wide as you want into those, but those would be the two.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, Dr. Johnson, I would like you to go a little bit deeper in those, and we'll take them separately, but I really like, if you wouldn't mind, with the pandemic and some of the things that you faced when the pandemic came. As you said, no one could have believed or even dreamed such a situation to happen. So just tell us a little bit more about that experience and some of the things and the results from it.
Well, Dr. Howard, thank you. And I'll say in the pandemic and, the executive order, scenario that we're currently dealing with, first and foremost is always protecting the 832 FTEs that I'm responsible for. That's my job as the president and CEO.
Mhm.
Every single morning that I go to work, it is my job to protect the livelihoods of those individuals. So, if you can flash back, what was it, 4 years ago, 4.5 years
Mhm.
now,
Yes.
maybe even 5. The governor here in California declared almost overnight that California was going to shut down. I'm sure similar to whatever state, Wisconsin or wherever your listeners are. And this thing called the pandemic was on us. It was kind of like overnight. And the very first thing that I needed to do was to ensure that 832 FTEs continue to make payroll, continue to receive their biweekly drawdown. We need to make sure we were liquid. We needed to make sure we had cash on hand to make that payroll, which is about 2.4 million every 2 weeks, like clockwork. All 28 programs functioning. And ensuring that, we were messaging as all of this was going down, right, throughout the organization, externally to our client base, and then our policymakers as well. So that was a huge challenge during the pandemic. And that was just kind of the beginning. And then, kind of this hybrid situation that we found ourselves in where, some of those direct services had to be back because they needed us on the ground. It was a very crucial time for us to be on the ground. We weren't going to be paid for services that we didn't render on the ground. And then balancing that with our back of house, where we could be more flexible with schedules in terms of coming into the office, doing a lot more remote work. And that evolved into a 2-day-a-week schedule and a cleanup day, a major disinfectant day. And we've kind of held that pattern over the last 4 years. We were in no hurry to go back to work. But all of that took coordination. And then the final piece, and then I'll pause, was the whole, whether or not, you were going to need to get vaccinated. That
Right.
means, 832 individuals, different religions come into play, different regulatory voices, federal, state, local. No one, they weren't necessarily on the same page, by the way. Let me say that. So you were setting policy and creating policy for an organization that was three-dimensional, and you needed to make it work for everyone. And, navigating that was difficult as well. But
So,
other than that, it was a piece of cake.
Right. Right.
so when you think about that, and I'll say, I know you said we weren't in a hurry to get back to work. I think that we weren't in a hurry to remove from being remote, and because we were still
Right.
working.
Oh,
Right.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
back to the office. I'm
That's
sorry.
what no, that's I knew that's what you intended. So when you think about the approach that you took to that situation, your mindset and so on and so forth, anything come to mind with regards to that you would say this was our approach? I mean, I heard some of the things of what you did. Anything you might add
That,
to that?
that was unique to the Neighborhood House Association?
Oh, just in general, because it may be something that others might just
Sure. Again, just looking at the complexity of what we do, Dr. White. I mean, we're on the front line. We're critical. We provide critical services, clinical services, early childhood education services, where a lot of those first responders, they had family and little children, and we needed to be on site to take care of the little children so that they can go serve the community. So all of that was, in play. And then you had three different, vaccinations going, the Johnson and Johnson, the Pfizer, and what was the other one? Oh, starts with an M. Anyway,
Moderna.
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 Yeah, there you go. And so one was a one-shot solution, one was a two-shot. So, I'm not a scientist, but you needed to know a little something about all of these things to make the right calls. And the other thing that I always say, Dr. White, I'm always good as the data that I receive. I can only make those good decisions based on data. So if I don't have the data, then it's hard to make a decision. So I relied a lot on the data.
Yeah, and I think having been part of your executive team at that time, I'll say another thing to your approach that I thought was very effective and helpful is that you made sure we met not just on our regular topics, but on the our response to the pandemic weekly. And yes, you demanded the data, the experts. So I think your approach was, I think, from being part of the team, I'll say very thorough with getting the data, but also very thorough with decision making and communication. I think were important keys to our success.
No, and I appreciate it. And I'll tell you, there was no manual. This is why the other
Remember we
thing,
created
the journal, here we go. Let's write this journal so we can package this puppy for 50 years from now.
Yeah, no, definitely. It looks like we're going to need to take a commercial break, but when we come back, Dr. Dre, maybe we'll have you lead a conversation with Mr. Johnson as relates to the outcomes. In retrospect, Mr. Johnson, if there's anything you would have done different, and then we'll move into maybe a second scenario and see if from each of those we might be able to come up with what might be some lessons learned, what might be some essential characteristics or skills that others might employ as they're dealing with the uncertainty at hand. So please stay with us. We'll be right back with more on Leadership Matters, informing leaders, inspiring solutions. And we are back with more on Leadership Matters. Today, we are talking about leading amid uncertainty. We have a fabulous guest, Mr. Rudolph Johnson III, President and CEO of the Neighborhood House Association in San Diego, California. And we have our full co-host team with us today as well, Dr. Loretta Howard and Dr. Undraye Howard. Dr. Dre, I'm going to toss it back over to you to get us going for this
Great.
next segment.
Thank you, Dr. White. Again, Dr. Johnson, such a great conversation with you this afternoon. Could you talk a little bit about the pandemic, the outcome of the pieces you had put in place and thought about? And I'm really interested in terms of, were you a little bit scared and intimidated going through that? Because over 890 talent within the organization, but thousands of lives in the community that you were responsible for. That had to be a lot of pressure. So if you could talk about that, that'd be great.
Sure, Dr. Howard. First of all, absolutely. I think the adrenaline from the fear of, being that CEO that could lose an organization that had been serving this community for, at that time, over 100 years, right? So no one wants to be that person.
Right.
No man or woman wants to take the helm of an organization that's been serving for longer than a century, and all of a sudden it implodes.
Yeah.
Right. So there was a lot of pressure there. The other pressure, and I don't think I've ever discussed this with my staff, so this is going to be new for them. I'm a fourth generation employee of this organization. My father was the deputy director to my predecessor. So the pressure of upholding the family, if you can understand that piece, and the family name and dynamic with respect to the responsibility we had to this community, because remember, I'm also a product of this organization. I went through this Head Start program in 1968. So all of that was coming, into play through that storm. And I'm gonna be honest, a lot of prayer, relying on my training, my depth and breadth of knowledge. We were able to retain 97% of our payroll through that storm. And a lot of organizations, lost employees, they shut down, they folded. So I'm prayerful that we were able to keep it together through that particular storm.
I think last week I said 95%, so I am pleased to be corrected that it was 97%. Kudos and really hats off to you as our president CEO in that space, but also I know you were trying to say something. Go on and jump back in.
I'm sorry. No, Doc. I was just, because my mind goes as I'm thinking. So 97% of the payroll retained. That means 97% of our employee base also maintain their health benefits, their retirement contributions. So, while this awful thing was happening, folks were still going to the doctor and getting their teeth fixed and their eyes checked. And, that's the stuff right here in my heart. That's why I wear this logo right over, because to me, there's nothing more precious than that.
No, appreciate that.
Okay. Wow, that's absolutely amazing. That 97% employees retained. I'm writing this down. It's just amazing that your organization's over 100 years old too, and fourth generation. My goodness, there's so much history in that. Just based on this you're sharing with us about the pandemic. As you reflect on that, is there anything that you would have done differently?
Yes, for sure. I think the thing that I probably would have done differently was be more of an advocate to line up all of the regulatory requirements that were coming at us at the federal, state, and local levels. And what I mean by that is, really just visiting with policymakers at each level and ensuring that we weren't hearing confusing voices, because that made it very, very tough on us. The other thing that I probably would have done different would probably have been ensuring that, you know, we were able to do more mental health services virtually. We got there, but that took a little bit of a battle. It was a little bit of a task. And then finally we got there. And so, you know, that was the piece that really helped us maintain that 97% workforce.
Wow.
Great. Totally. You know, when we started, you said there were 2 out of about
Yeah.
15 situations. That I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about
Yeah.
the second one you brought
Sure.
up with regards to currently all of the, you know,
Mhm.
probably executive orders and other things that might be happening at the national level that has a local impact.
So thank you, Doc. So we run 28 programs. The marquee program in our portfolio is called Head Start, a program called Head Start. You may have heard of Head Start. We serve 4,000 children a day out of our Head Start program. It's 85% of our operating budget. So a month and a half ago, when the president came on the air and said, as of 5 o'clock Eastern time, we are going to shut down the electronic spigot on all programs such as Head Start, right, until further notice. Well, that sent us into a bit of a panic. Again, it's 85% of our operational revenue. It's, you know, 90 some odd percent of our service effort. And it has about 600 of our 800 FTEs inside of that cost center. So 5 o'clock Eastern time is 2 o'clock Pacific time. So we get this notification about 11, and here's the call that has to be made at 11. Do we allow our employees and all of our sub-recipients that work for us out in the field delivering these services and all of the products and goods and services that we're purchasing in a given day to continue, or do we shut everything down and send everyone home and lay them off? That was about a $270,000 decision each day. You missed it. So if I allowed it to happen till 5, it cost us $270,000. If tomorrow I don't make a decision, that's another $270,000.
Right.
So there's a number on every day you delay that decision. Now the backdrop is, how much cash do we have in the bank? Because I can delay the decision up to the liquidity that we currently stand at. And so that whole 3-dimensional chess, and then come 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, he comes on the screen and says, oh, no, I didn't mean Head Start. Okay. So that was tough. Then after that, there was rumors that Head Start would not make, you know, this 25, 26 budget cycle. That, you know, got beat back. And now Head Start is funded inside of what they call the skinny budget that it's currently moving through Congress. Is over in the Senate right now. So you're planning, you're organizing scenarios, you're talking to your board, you have unrest in the workforce because they're watching CNN, and you're trying to keep it all together and stay liquid and maintain at least a payroll cycle so you can give yourself time to make decisions as these knee-jerk reactions are coming out of Washington.
Yeah. Well, we are certainly grateful and thankful that after that first big announcement, that Head Start has thus far continued, and that our employees continue to have their livelihoods, and that our community and children continue to be served. And we're going to hope that it makes it through the skinny budget, and that continues to be our journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Dr. Johnson, in terms of the outcomes, I mean, What if you had gone the other way and said, let's stop everything? I mean,
Mhm.
I mean, what the cost have been to just stop it? Aside from the fiscal piece of it, I mean, we're
Well,
done.
yeah, I
We can't do
mean,
it
the
this way.
train that again,
Yeah,
the same pressures of the pandemic,
yeah,
the failure, the letting the community down, the not being there for the 25,000, families and individuals we touch a day in 28 different programs. We would have literally cut our lights out and shut our doors,
right,
and not to mention 836 individuals on the unemployment line,
right.
all that stuff, and it just gets ugly,
Yes,
right? So no one wants to be that man or woman.
right,
Mhm,
right.
mhm,
Absolutely.
mhm.
Dr. Johnson, just a question, because you said about the pandemic that if you could have done something differently, it would have been maybe more of an advocate to line up with the regulatory leaders and for policy. So I'm curious, right now, while you're living in what's going on, what would you like to do differently if you could? And would it still be to work, as more of an advocate? Do you even think that's possible in the climate that we're in right now?
I've been doing this gig for 20 years, Dr. Howard, and this is the most unpredictable administration I've ever, worked through with or for. Um, so it's really hard to give you any scenario that I would probably do different because it's not like anyone can control the outcomes coming from Washington right now anyway.
Yes.
Very true.
Mhm. A good question, and understand the response. Looks like we need to take another commercial break, but when we come
Mhm.
back, we'll do a little bit more reflection and see what lessons may be pulled from the journey that you've been through, Mr. Johnson, and any other thoughts that might come up with regards to skills and characteristics that are most essential for leaders to have as they lead through times of uncertainty. So please stay with us. We'll be right back with more on Leadership Matters, informing leaders, inspiring solutions. And we are back with more on Leadership Matter, talking about leading amid uncertainty with Mr. Johnson, Rudolph Johnson from the Neighborhood House Association in San Diego, California. A wonderful co-host with us today, Dr. Loretta Howard and Dr. Undraye Howard. You know, we talked about both of those scenarios, the pandemic and now where we are with a lot of uncertainty in the nation. I know you're leading the Neighborhood House in this journey, just as many other organizations throughout, our nation, and of course that rippling effect in the world. What are some things that you're doing? What are some things in retrospect that you might even share with others that might be helpful as they navigate our current uncertain times?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. White. And again, I'll speak on behalf of, being in the capacity as CEO of the Neighborhood House, because sometimes, individuals will come into your world and they'll try to say, well, this is what you should do. I'm not that kind of CEO. I think, what we do is we put ideas on the wall, and if they work for you, take them. If they don't, try something different. And so three categories I'll touch on. First category, employee base or your workforce. When they're hearing these, issues being played out publicly on television, national news, whatever, it builds unrest inside the organization, obviously. So the first thing you can do is hit that with direct truth telling to your workforce. And, Dr. White can attest to the fact that I've tried to get out to as many all-employee meetings, special meetings, sending out all-employee memos, just every point along the way. So they're hearing my voice. I want my employees to hear my voice and not what's going on or being played in national media. So that's point number one. Number two, to take some pressure off that relief valve, I, as the president and CEO, said we're going to do 2 to 3 things right away. Number one, if anyone wants to cash out vacation accrual that they have on the books that we've booked, have at it. You're responsible. You're a grown woman, you're a grown man. You know how much responsibly you can cash out. We've already banked it. It doesn't cost the organization any other money. We'll allow you to get to that because this could be considered kind of a hardship. And to that point, retirement systems, there are hardship withdrawals that are allowed. I've made it easier for individuals to make hardship withdrawals so that if they feel like, that pressure valve is getting too tight on their family, they have some relief, right? So CEOs can make those decisions. They may confer with their board or tell their board, so they can do that. The other things that, I've tried to do was make sure we live within our means. In my own personal world, I live below my means, right? So if you're following, a lot of folks live above, equal to. I live below, to the point to where my wife says I'm a miser, but that's okay. I don't mind being there because then you build up what we call rainy day funds, right? And so now you translate that into your professional life. That's how I spend the agency's money, right? We try to live below what our revenue generation is so that we can generate a reserve. You always need a reserve. And here's why. For payroll, I would strongly recommend you have a reserve equal to 2 weeks worth of payroll distribution, which is really one payroll cycle in our case, because we're paid every 2 weeks. That means you can give yourselves 2 weeks to make decisions, collect information, and do things that you need to do before you're up against some kind of clock that's going to force you to do that. And then the final thing that we try to do is build an unrestricted reserve. So that's a larger reserve pool, and if you eat through your cash that you have on hand for that 2 week distribution, you can have a cushion, in the way of an unrestricted reserve pool that will help diffuse your situation a little bit. And then at some point, you got to declare when you're just going to say, hey, we have to shut this puppy down or do something different.
Yeah, we appreciate your sharing, and
Great.
I'm sure employees appreciate it. I think you've right-sized expectations that we don't know, and with those options, it can at least reduce the anxiety where people know I'll at least have this available to me or that available to me. Of course, we're hoping that none of that happens, and we continue to be able to serve the community how we've been serving and having the funds available. And it's a relief to know that there are some lifelines that people can grab in the midst of things getting darker, or the rivers beginning to overflow and getting worse. So
this is, this is such a great discussion. Again, I'm learning so much. Obviously, I always learn from Dr. Johnson. I hope our listeners are also just sucking up all of the knowledge that Dr. Johnson is kind of dropping on us this afternoon. I really do appreciate this discussion. Let's switch just a little bit in terms of talking about characteristics or skills, Dr. Johnson, that you think are most essential for leaders to have to kind of manage through times of uncertainty. And I've got a small list. And if you were to, on a scale, 1 being, that's not so important, and 5 being, that's very important, what do you think about characteristics like comfort with ambiguity? Is that an important characteristic to have for a leader during times of uncertainty?
Now, when you say comfort with ambiguity, just like things aren't fully defined and you still are managing and things of that nature.
Yes.
I'd put that, you said 5 being the highest, and I'd put that at about a 2.
Okay.
One of the characteristics you have to have, in my opinion, is depth and breadth of knowledge.
Okay.
So you should have been to the dance before or know where to find the music, right?
Right.
Because this world, this is a big bad world, right? And another Oprah show for another time, but I want to come back and do this show too, but I'm gonna drop one on you, Dr. White. Our folks, I'm sure y'all following me, aren't trained for leadership the way we need to be. And Dr. White knows this is my pet peeve. This is why I go all over the country and I give talks and I do town halls on HBCU campuses, inside organizations, to talk about, and I'm just going to say it, individuals that are of color and happen to be decision makers and purse string holders, because it's not very often you see that, right? And we're not trained for that, and I'm not trying to be negative. I'm speaking truth to power. So that's a characteristic that I would say is a 5, Doc, is depth and breadth of knowledge.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because when it goes, here's the thing. When the panic bells hit, somebody has to sit in that room and draw on some expertise up in there. Okay? And be able to have that sound mind when folk are running in saying, well, the sky is falling, somebody has to say, well, bring me the list that says the sky is falling, and I need to go down and check to make sure, the sky is falling. Right?
Absolutely.
I like the both and. So I just have to say that I think the depth and breadth of knowledge really sharpens a person's skills. It really lends to be able to deal with the ambiguity. Because I think being able to deal with ambiguity is real important during uncertainty. And what allows us to be able to do that sometimes is having that depth and breadth. And I know I just throw that out there to both of you for further discussion.
That's good. This other thing too, Dr. Johnson, is this emotional regulation, a sense of calmness. I mean, how would you rate that? Is that high on the 5 end or
very
low?
High, very high. Yeah. Because here's the thing, everyone can be like running down the hall saying, this thing has gotten to a point to where it's unbearable.
Right.
Like somebody has to sit down and, it's just like a pilot You know, if there's something going on with the plane, God forbid, somebody has to sit in the cockpit and try to redirect that puppy, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, yeah, I would say that's high.
Yeah,
Yes, for sure.
definitely.
And to kind of pace yourself, take a deep breath and take it one step at a time.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be hearing from everyone. Everyone around that table, you're going to be hearing from your policy body. You're going to be hearing from outside the organization. And my mama will call me and tell me what's on her mind
Right, sure.
in the midst of the executive order.
Right.
You know, it's like, Mom, thank you. I love you. I love you, Mom. Thank you. You know, active listening. You got to have active listening, but not take every
Absolutely.
piece of advice.
Right.
That's a skill set.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The other one last one, Dr. Johnson, you talked a little bit about too, was kind of building this trust through transparency. Sometimes leaders will hide or not disclose everything, but you seem like you're full disclosure. This is an open book.
To the extent I can be, you
Yeah.
know, Doc, I'm not going to sit here and say I let our employee base know about every single issue that's going on. There are some issues that are better not talked about because they're on their way out or they're about to be resolved and that kind of stuff. Or if you start talking about it, it'll never get resolved. But in terms of transparency, I like for them to hear my voice and what I know is true for this organization and not what they're hearing outside the organization.
Absolutely.
So that's what we try to do.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. Great.
Yeah, and so, Dr. Loretta, before we shift gears, I just want to underscore each of those because I thought those are really good for our listening audience to that whole, being able to deal with ambiguity as one of those skills, the others being depth and breadth of knowledge, emotional regulation, ability to step back and put things into perspective, active listening, and then building trust through transparent or truthful conversations and communication.
Right.
So thank you both for that conversation. Dr. Loretta, I think you were going to step in.
Yes, I was. I know we're almost up for a break, but this will give Dr. Johnson an opportunity to think about it. As we are doing all of these sessions, one of the questions that we're asking our guests is, what do you hope for? So as you think about all that's going on, what you're facing right now with this current situation, political climate and all that, what do you hope for?
And so we're going to put a comma right there and look forward to hearing that on the other side of the commercial. Thank you for that question. When we come back, we'll hear what does Mr. Rudolph Johnson hope for and any other final tips that we might share today. So please stay with us and we'll be right back with more on Leadership Matters, informing leaders, inspiring solutions. And we are back with more on Leadership Matters. Today, we're talking about leading amid uncertainty with Mr. Rudolph Johnson III, President and CEO of the Neighborhood House Association in San Diego, California. So glad to have you here and really appreciate your taking the time to share your experiences and wisdom and knowledge with us today. And also delighted to have Dr. Loretta Howard and Dr. Undraye Howard with us as co-host. I'm going to throw it back over to you, Dr. Loretta.
Okay, thank you, Dr. White. Yeah, I am just really enjoying this session. I feel like an hour is not enough because with Mr. Johnson here, there's so much that he is sharing that can help all of us. And I'm just looking forward to hearing what you hope for. That's what I really want to know. What is it you are hoping for after all this information you have shared with us? What are you hoping for? What do you hope comes next?
I hope to see more executives that have lived experience and look like me and come from the places I come from. I hope this world is open to, more executives kind of matriculating into their seats in the future. And that's what I'm about right now. In this last chapter of what I have left to give, I'm going to make it my business to make sure they're ready for that.
Absolutely. And Dr. Johnson, you also talked a little bit about, I love the hope. We have to keep hope, right? That's what keeps us going. But there's other essential characteristic, and I think skill set that leaders, I don't see a lot of it. I know Dr. Johnson is not trying to toot his horn here and try to build him up. He's natural at this. But a lot of leaders lack the ability to pivot and to kind of think while running, as well as drinking a glass of water and chewing gum and doing hopscotch and singing a song and dancing all at the same time. And I'm thinking to myself, where does the ability to pivot and be flexible come from? And where does it fit into this uncertainty paradigm as we talk about this?
So I was an athlete in college. I played football. And some of us played sports, and those that didn't, forgive me for this analogy, but there's what they call game pace and there's practice pace. And I think oftentimes there are leaders that have all the theory and they do well in practice, but when the game hits, it's a different story, right? There's a game speed to being an executive, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
And so what you just hit on, Doc, brings me to game speed, the ability to listen, process information at a rapid pace, and then quickly execute. To me, those are game pace, executives. Those are executives that understand the rapid fire, pace of the job. And it's three-dimensional. You have your policy body, right? You have your executive team members, and then you have your workforce. And probably an external would be the public that you're serving. And so you're constantly processing all this information and gathering all this data, and then you're making concrete decisions quickly. We have 28 programs. We serve 25,000 individuals daily. I make probably 100 decisions plus a day, So yeah, absolutely. It's high up there. It's 5+.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you for sharing that. I've just witnessed so much of that, the inability to pivot and see organizations just face disaster and typically closing down, not being able to serve the community. It just no good outcomes in terms of that process. So I thought that was important. Thank you for sharing.
No, thanks for bringing that up. Good discussion. Any final thoughts or tips?
For me?
Yes, Mr. Johnson.
Well, I thought I left it all out on the field. I can do this all day. I guess three things that I would say. Number one, just know you're not going to be perfect on your first day in office.
Mm.
So to the young CEOs that may be out there, or COOs, or anyone who's interested in taking a leadership position, just know on day one, you're not going to have all the answers.
Mm.
Second thing is get real intimate with your budget. I follow the money. The money for me is like the sheet of music. So if I'm playing in a classical orchestra, the money is my sheet of music. That's
Mhm.
what's dictating the notes that I'm playing operationally, if you're following me. A lot of us don't handle the money.
Right.
A lot of us don't manage the money. And so I've purposely tried to make my team responsible for managing their money, whether they wanted to or not, because I know it's in their best interest,
Mhm.
right? So that's number two. And then the third thing, just to dock what you just said, be nimble, be quick, be able to be flexible, adjust, turn on a dime.
Yeah, and Dr. John, that whole piece about, you know, being able to understand, I don't have all the answers sometimes as a leader, and I recognize that. But the key is that, leaders such as yourself can kind of hold, steady everything while things are shifting around them, and give a sense of calmness and clarity, even through times of uncertainty. And I think that's what really separates exceptional leaders such as yourself versus other leaders who don't have the ability to do that, to make that happen, to make uncertainty feel less threatening, and to not be able to minimize real challenges. And you really have kind of scored big in being able to do that within your own organization, in your own community, and across this nation. So I just wanted to put that out there as well. So.
Well, I appreciate you, sir. I thank you for that. But I think personally, Neighborhood House Association in San Diego has a whole bunch of talent that has not been discovered.
Yeah,
And this is why we do this show, because you all wouldn't have, well, you would have known this about us, but there are some listeners out there that are saying, wow, these folks, they kind of know what's going on. I mean, when you listen to this show, you can't walk away from here thinking, yeah, those folks probably don't know what's going on because they've been through some stuff, right?
Yeah.
But we're not out enough to share it. And I'm just one voice. I mean, we have 10 individuals that are very capable of doing this very same thing.
Yeah. Excellent. Great.
Wonderful. So I think that's just a lot of great information shared today. Really appreciate, again, your sharing. Dr. Loretta, Dr. Dre, any final thoughts as we wrap up?
For myself, I can truly say that I have enjoyed this session. I have learned so much from Mr. Johnson, just some things to really think about. And the talking about the getting intimate with the budget, definitely. I think all leaders need to know what's going on with the budget, where the money is, how much money you have for those things that, when you were talking about actually having the reserve information like that, some leaders do not think about that. I'm a firm believer, and you need to know how much money you have, what's the reserve, just in case something happens. Because as you said earlier, no one could have predicted the pandemic. And that's why so many people did end up closing their businesses or whatever, for profit, nonprofit, a lot of them, because they just didn't have the funding. They didn't know even how much money or funding they had. So that is so crucial, keeping the doors open and the payroll, because you do not want to be in the news that you did not pay people.
Nope.
Yes,
Good place
no.
to be.
So again, thank you so much, Mr. Johnson. We totally appreciate your being with us today. And
Yes.
thank you to our listening audience for
Yes.
tuning in. We
Yes.
invite you to send topics that you're interested in learning more about to Leadership Matters questions at innovisions.org. Please join us every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, or download our podcast at your convenience. Until next time, keep on keeping on, informing